Okay, awesome. Yeah, I'll let you go ahead and take it away, Gianna.
All right, everyone can see my screen. Perfect. Well, welcome to our session. I'm excited to learn with you all and collaborate with you in our space today. We're going to be focusing on empowering diverse classrooms. So we're going to talk about some strategies as supervisors that we can use to develop culturally responsive educators. Um, so I am a supervisor at San Jose State, but a lot of my supervision experience has actually been at San Francisco State, but I moved, and so now I'm working with San Jose, and this fall UCSC as well for supervision. So I'm looking forward to that. So today, some of the goals that I have for us is to examine why culturally responsive supervision matters, to practice giving equitable strengths-based feedback to our candidates. And then I'm going to have us leave with some feedback sentence starter banks, if that's helpful for you, and creating a small action plan of the next steps for us as we're moving forward. So to get started, the first thing I want to do is I'm going to open a Menti, and I'm going to put that in the chat. And what it's asking you to do, and let me share that screen, is to share in one word. But if one word is a little too nerve-wracking for you, you can share up to 3 words. Describe in one or a few words your current supervision style. And I will share this as the results are coming in. And we'll give it a couple minutes. Student-centered, laid back, collaborative, casual. Yeah, some people are using the chat and some the Menti, and that's absolutely okay. Yeah, supportive, caring. Yeah, listen, then offer and help. Love that. Reflective and supportive, candidate-led, interest. A lot of support. I love that. Relational, yeah. Cooperative, candidate-led, yeah. Accommodating. Yeah, relationships is huge. Just gonna give us maybe 30 more seconds if someone's still typing out a response. Awesome. Okay, I'm gonna switch back to my other screen. Thank you for sharing. So as we move forward, I know Lisa set our norms this morning, but I always like to set them in a session too, just so that we know what to expect of one another in this time that we're sharing. The first norm that I have is assume positive intent and seek clarification, right? So we're encouraging grace if any missteps happen as we're talking, and keeping dialogue open with others. And what that might look like is, can you say more about what you meant when you said, right? So we're asking for clarity. Name strengths before suggestions, right? And that's what we do with our candidates too, is we're highlighting the great things that are happening. And one day that we might, or one way that we might say that here is, one asset that I hear is, and a next step might be. The next one is own our own perspective, or own your perspective, right? Everyone's relationships with their candidates is different. And so I want to honor that by using I statements to avoid generalizing things that are going on with our candidates and our placements. So one thing that we could say is, in my context, I've noticed, or with my teacher candidates that I supervise, I've noticed. And then step up and step back, right? We want to balance airtime so that everyone's voice is heard, especially people who might be shy or a little less likely to contribute at first. And one way to say that is, I'll pause in case someone who hasn't spoken wants to add something. And lastly, we're keeping equity at the center, right? We're going to focus on the cultural assets. That's what we're talking about today. We're going to focus on rigor for students and bias-free language in our discussions, but also for the discussions that we have with our teacher candidates and the teacher candidates have with their students. So something that might stimulate that conversation might be something like, how has this idea advanced equity for our candidates and their students, right? Because that's the center of what we're doing. So just to get us some conversation going to start here, I'm going to put you in some breakout rooms. I want you to introduce yourself and where you supervise. And you might be like me and supervise at multiple places, which is wonderful. And then share one highlight from supervision last quarter or last semester. So we won't spend too much time, maybe a minute or two each as we're sharing. And then we'll all come back together. So you will have two other people with you in your breakout, and then we'll come together in about 4 minutes. And they are open now. If anyone has trouble joining, please let me know. Anyone who hasn't joined, are you having issues joining? Can we support you in getting there? I see room 11 only has one person there, so I can move them if our other folks are having trouble. Okay, I'm gonna move Bernadette to room 12 just to give her someone to talk.
Go to 11.
Oh, Lisa, I think you glitched for a second for me. I did move Bernadette, so now she has someone to chat with.
Great. I can join in room 2 if you want.
It looks like everyone's got someone to talk to now, which is great.
Mm.
We just
Mm-hmm.
have one not joined. Okay, that's all right.
Yes. Mm.
Am I glitching on my end?
It's a little glitchy every once in a while.
It's so weird. Okay, let me just check my. I'm inviting folks to come back in 60 seconds.
Everything okay? I just got booted out of my Zoom. I don't know what's happening.
Oh, weird. I don't know.
So frustrating. Okay, as long
It
as you're
says
out.
breakout rooms are closing in 48 seconds, so I'm thinking everything is going okay.
Okay, good. Okay, good. Oh dear.
Did
Trying to.
anyone else get booted from their breakout room? No? Okay, perfect. Awesome. I'm just waiting for everyone to make their way back as they're wrapping up conversations or connections. Awesome. I think everyone made their way back. I hope it was nice to connect with other supervisors and have faces and names. Good. Celeste is saying it's awesome to connect with people from different places in the state. Yeah, absolutely. I'm hoping we're going to get a lot of time to collaborate together. So I'm hoping that will be meaningful for you all. So I want to start with why. Why does culturally sustaining practices matter and why does culturally relevant teaching matter, right? This is student enrollment data from the 2024-2025 school year for the California Public School. If we look at this, what is it telling us? 4 out of 5 students or 8 out of 10 students bring different cultural and linguistic backgrounds to our classrooms, right? And these differ from what's traditional in curriculum and the dominant cultures that exist there. And so by not connecting the student learning to these assets, we're losing engagement or we're risking losing engagement, right? Potentially lower achievement or missed opportunities to reach all learners in our classrooms. And so culturally responsive teaching is that bridge. And when we validate the home language, we value the community relevant examples, and we're holding high expectations for all of our students and in connection as a supervisor, right? We're able to bridge that gap. And let's think a minute what we do as supervisors. And I really like what our keynote said is not using the word supervisor, but mentor or partner, right? Our university partner. We're working towards praxis, right? We're not just an evaluator that comes in and writes with a pencil and a paper, right? We're a person and we come with our own assets and experiences as classroom teachers, right? All of us have been that. And we're learning and co-creating with our teacher candidates as well. So we're bridging what the candidates are learning in their coursework, and we're helping them practice these ideas in the classroom, right? So big ideas like culturally sustaining pedagogy or universal design for learning, right? We are the people who are seeing this in action, right? And so we're seeing tension points that the candidates are running into. We're seeing the great instruction and great ideas that are coming to life. And we see when they try to be brave and try something new and when it works, when it doesn't work, right? So we're not just watching, we're helping co-create and we're helping shape their teaching practice. So when we observe and reflect and act in ways, this helps our candidates do the same. Any thoughts or questions before we continue? Awesome. So I just want to quickly, I'm sure all of us are familiar, but I just want to go over the progression of theories and how this connects to what we're doing and how it will connect to supervision and what our candidates are doing in the classroom. So if we look at 1995, right, Gloria Ladson-Billings coins the term culturally relevant pedagogy, right, where teachers are fostering academic success and affirming cultural identities while developing critical consciousness. So her big theme was affirming students' identities in the classroom. Then in 2000, we have Geneva Gay, where she's reframing to culturally responsive teaching or CRT. And this is emphasizing daily instructional moves that are happening in the classroom that are grounded in students' lived experiences. And then we fast forward to 2012 with Paris and Alim, where they coined culturally sustaining pedagogy, right? And this is where our schools should sustain students' evolving cultural and linguistic practices, not simply responding to them. So again, I wrote here, sustains and extends their languages, cultures, and ways of knowing. So as supervisors, or I want to say university mentors or partners now after our keynote, our feedback either reinforces or dismantles some of these deficit narratives. So as an asset-based supervisor, we might ask our candidate, how are we leveraging student culture for rigorous learning, rather than what's missing here? So if we look at Ladson-Billings, I want to dive into her work. And she has 3 pillars here: academic success. And the way that we could do this is hold our candidates to high rigor evidence and observation notes. So that's having timestamps, having connections to what's happening in the lesson and when is it happening in the lesson. Cultural competence. And we can practice this by probing how lessons validate those home languages or community funds of knowledge in the classroom. And lastly, critical consciousness. How do we encourage our candidates to design tasks that let children analyze real world inequities, right? Looking at local data in the community, things that are going on that really connect to who they are and where they live. So I just want to pause for a second And I want you to think about which of these three pillars of Latson Billings do you feel like is the hardest to connect with as a supervisor, hardest to coach a cooperating teacher with? So I'm going to give us maybe 60 seconds to think about which one of these is most challenging for you. And you don't have to put it in the chat. I know it's vulnerable. If you'd like to, feel free though. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you for sharing and being vulnerable in the chat. I really appreciate that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for taking time to reflect. Uh-huh. Thank you. So I'm going to look at our next theory as we're continuing on. And this slide is really busy, and I thought about breaking it up into two, but I wanted it all together because these are the 5 essential components that Geneva Gay talks about with culturally responsive pedagogy. And I just wanted it to be really clear and easy to follow for you all as we're looking at it. So we're zooming in and connecting this research to supervision and how we can kind of bridge it together. So the first component is cultural knowledge, right? What is the quick explanation? Teachers must know the histories, values, and community contributions of their students. So what can we ask our candidates? What community strengths will you build on in this lesson, right? Culturally relevant curriculum, content that's including multiple perspectives, visuals, examples that represent diversity that's in the classroom. So during our feedback, we can note whether these materials are reflecting the cultures and linguistic abilities in our classrooms. Just trying to follow the chat here. Okay, cool. And third, the essential component is high expectations, right? We're affirming identity and we're insisting on rigorous thinking and critical problem-solving skills. So we're highlighting evidence, right? I saw you pressing students for deeper reasoning when. I noticed you gave a challenge to students at this point in the lesson, or I noticed collaborative thinking and learning at this point in your lesson. The next one is responsive communication, right? We're adapting different discourse styles, right? Participatory talk or hands up, right? We want to make sure that our candidates are mixing in lots of different ways that students can participate and talk with one another in the classroom. So it's not just teacher to student, or it's not a hand raising. There is this dialogue going on within the classroom. And so we can encourage our candidates to view lively talk as engagement, not misbehavior, right? A lot of times when we hear a lot of noise in the classroom, our candidates are nervous because we're there and we have this title of supervisor, right? But when you listen into these conversations, whatever way that they're getting attention from students back to the big group, sometimes those conversations are so academically relevant and so important to what the student's level of understanding is that we can affirm that for our candidates of, hey, I noticed you got nervous when students didn't come back together right away, but I heard, and you could even quote, right, as we're taking brief notes, I heard this student saying this, and I heard they were wrapping up their discussion here. They were grappling with the understanding. And I think it's important because sometimes new teachers think that volume doesn't necessarily mean engagement, and sometimes it's exactly that. And then lastly, multicultural examples and connections. So we're linking new knowledge to students' lived experiences in the classroom. And how can we encourage this for our candidates? Where could students connect these concepts to their everyday lives, right? What is something the students are doing outside of the classroom? What's something we know about who they are? Because if we look at, schema or different things, everything is connected, right? And we want to build on that connection because building new concepts is hard. But if we're connecting to prior knowledge, we're able to learn a lot quicker. So looking at this and thinking about it, which component is most difficult for you to see in candidate lessons? And that doesn't mean your candidate has a deficit, but you as a supervisor, what is challenging for you to notice or think about? And you can share it in the chat or you can reflect on your own. Greg asked if I'm willing to share my slides. Absolutely. I'll make sure that they are in that folder. I'm sorry, I did not have a chance to do that prior. Yeah, the fifth one. Yeah. And I think that's a great point. I see some people, Rebecca, saying more than one. Yeah, sometimes it's hard to see multiple, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. But if we're intentional about which ones are challenging for us to see, we can frame ourselves when we go in for an observation of, I'm really going to put intentionality behind looking for these things in my teacher candidates. Yeah, thank you. Just going to give a couple seconds for people to start adding things in the chat. Awesome. So as we move on here, I want us to think about your last observation. And now I know all of us have been out for summer, so it has been a couple months. Which component did you highlight for your candidate and which did you miss, right? And you can just write this on your own. You don't have to add it to the chat if you'd like to. That's great too. But one idea about how to address that gap in your next feedback cycle. So as we're visiting our candidates, as we're having this open dialogue and this relationship with them, which component here did you feel like you might have missed? And I'll go back here just so you can see them. And again, thank you so much for your vulnerability and willingness to share. I know it can be scary in a big group. Really appreciate it. Okay. Okay, I'm going to continue on to now talking about CSP or culturally sustaining practices. So we've looked at this evolution from culturally relevant teaching to culturally responsive teaching and now to culturally sustaining practices, right? Um, and the big part of this is we're not just connecting to students' culture, but we're actively keeping it alive and we're allowing it to grow within our classrooms. I guess our teacher candidates' classrooms, right? Because we are supervisors, but we think about the three big ideas they have. The first one being sustaining and extending students' languages, cultures, identities in school rather than replacing them. So what can we do? We can look for lesson moves that let students use home languages, community data, things in their home environment, or cultural practices as academic resources. The other big idea is valuing culture as dynamic, evolving. It's not fixed or traditional, right? So we're encouraging our candidates to invite contemporary youth culture. Think about how we can mix that into our classrooms or our teacher candidates' classrooms, right? Maybe into math examples. That's just one thing I wrote, but across curriculum, right? And then foster critical consciousness, right? Students critique inequities while learning content. And we can put those together. So we might ask our candidates, where can learners analyze real world data that matter to their community? I was at a conference earlier this year and someone was presenting on science and they had pulled all of the local data on parks. And in that, they were able to see, wow, wait, this community has so many parks, per square foot, and this one doesn't. Why? That's not fair. And their students had these really rich conversations behind local data. And I think it's a really great way for us to start addressing some of these inequities is with the raw data that we see in our communities. And so one thing we might ask ourselves is, how is this lesson sustaining students' linguistic or cultural practices while still advancing the curricular goals that we've put in place? So I want to open up discussion to all of us, so feel free to unmute or put in the chat. Have you seen CSP in your TC's work? And what does it look like? Actually, I'll put us in breakout rooms. I think it's going to be more meaningful that way. Let's do just a couple minutes. And I'll leave you with the same people, and that way you can continue those relationships. I'm going to move one person so that they have a person to talk to. Okay, I'm going to open the rooms for maybe about 5 minutes. I might poke in too if you don't want me in there. I always tell my students, just wave me off and I'll find another group to listen in on. So we'll be back together about 10:41.
Hi. Oh.
Hi, Bernadette. Good to see you.
You too, Gianna. Um, how much time do we have in the breakout room? I hit the wrong button and I want to go back. They were having a really good
Oh,
conversation.
we actually only had a couple minutes, but you'll be with the same people moving forward. So if you got cut off in a conversation, feel free to continue it. We'll be back in them in about 3 or 4 minutes.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
Absolutely. I got to listen in on some awesome things that are going on with supervisors and teacher candidates. Does anyone want to share out something that they chatted about in their breakout room before we move forward?
If I could
Yeah,
call on
Gregory.
Kimberly to share out what you said. That was really interesting.
Oh, I mentioned that part of my work, a big part of my work is to supervise students that are serving migratory families.
Mhm.
And one of the things that I've seen teachers do is translate what's on the field, the physical things that are being cultivated, and into like actual healthy habits and what that means like for their everyday life. Making salads, like
Mhm.
just again bringing that cultural component to what is in their daily life, but making it academic and yeah.
Thank you so much, Kimberly and Gregory, for sharing. And that's something at the end, I'm going to share my email, but I would love to create just a community. Maybe it's an email, maybe it's something like a forum we can communicate on, but just a way to connect some of these ideas that are going on in our teacher candidates classrooms. Because I think, like our keynote was saying, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. If we see something that's really working, we need to share it with one another so that we can, we're helping produce the next generation of teachers, and we get to coach and co-facilitate and co-learn with them. And so if we find things that are really working, we need to share them with one another so that we can all collaborate. So I'm going to keep moving forward. And I know one of the biggest challenges, right, is we have these TPEs that our teacher candidates are balancing. We have these program requirements. We have Cal TPA or Ed TPA. And so there's so much on their plate. And so sometimes it's hard for them to think about all of these components into a lesson, right? And depending on the university that you're at, some of us visit 6 times in a semester, some of us visit 3 times in a semester, right? It looks different for all of us. But most of us, I think everyone has a pre-conference, an observation, and a post-observation, right? Sometimes the pre-conference might be a phone call, it might be a Zoom, it might be reading over their lesson plan and giving annotations. But I'm encouraging you, on top of the TPEs you're looking for and the things that the program is asking the candidate to do, can you set 1 to 2 culturally sustaining look-fors in the lesson with your candidate? Can you clarify the inquiry goal so the observation evidence leads directly back to it? I'm just checking the chat here. Yes, exactly, Gregory. And then during the observation, we want to focus on evidence, right? No judgment as we come in, right? We've all been in the same position being supervised or watched by someone as well. And we want to script those quotations. I really like that when I'm having these debriefs later, is do I have direct evidence or data from the observation I can pull from? And I'm so positive with my candidates because they're trying so hard and they're working so hard and they're growing that I want to praise all of the great things I'm seeing. And so I try to write them down because it's hard to remember them if we don't write them down, right? We might be in there an hour, we might be in there 30 minutes. And during that time, a lot of things are happening. And so I just jot down as many shorthand notes as I can. If it's a recording, I try to do timestamps at this time in the video. And that way, if my candidate wants to go back and see where I'm praising this awesome moment that they had with their students, they can go back and rewatch it. Because I think sometimes our candidates, they're nervous. They don't always remember everything too. So if we can point to a really awesome point in their lesson, it's nice to reinforce that for them. And then with the post observation, always start with a strength, right? I think all of us do that, but that is the biggest thing is you have that humanistic relationship with your candidate first and foremost, right? You have a personal relationship, and then you get into the academics, and that comes with the strength. And I want to come from a place of inquiry. I always say stay curious as the supervisor or as the university mentor, right? What do you notice about how students leverage community knowledge? And then at the end of that observation, we want to end with a co-plan next step. That's going to maintain the rigor and sustain culture in the classroom. Yeah, Colleen, I see your hand.
Yeah, just really quickly, I know you don't have a ton of time. Do
Yeah.
you happen to have, and maybe this was on one of the previous slides, a list of culturally sustaining look-fors? Because I'd love to add those to my observation forms.
Yes, and those are coming up. I think I have till 11:10. Is that right, Lisa? I hope. 'Cause
Sorry, you have until, oh, let me just double check. I
well,
think
just
it's
because we started 10 minutes late,
11.
but if I need to end in 13, that's okay too.
Yeah, the next workshop starts at 11:10.
Okay, perfect.
So I want to
I'll
give a
try to give you all a couple minute break
little
then
break.
before you, yeah, before you jump in. But yes, Colleen, those will be shared. And I'll make sure that Lisa has them in the shared folder. So if we're looking for maybe a feedback checklist as we're meeting with our candidates, here's something you can use. And some of you are probably already doing this, but I just thought it might be helpful to kind of have a visual here of name a specific strength first, always, right? But I always start with a question, what do you feel went really well in your lesson? And I just listen. Sometimes I'm taking notes, sometimes I'm just listening, and then I write up the notes after the observation. And then, did it acknowledge a cultural asset of the students in the classroom? Did you maintain academic rigor or connecting students' ZPDs within that lesson? And was intentional language used, right? We want to make sure that our teacher candidates are free of biased language, things that might be oppressive or hurtful to students. And then inviting that candidate for their own reflection and co-planning these next steps that you're going to have for the lesson. Because I find, and I don't know if the same is true for all of you, that a lot of my teacher candidates always go to the negative first. And it's so hard because they're doing so many amazing things that you want to highlight that. And so I always say, I know that you feel something went wrong, but tell me the good first. And they're going to do a lot of that reflection next step on their own. And you can help them clarify a goal that they want to do in their next lesson. So if you're doing a cycle, like at San Jose, we'll do one observation, and then we'll set an intentional goal together. And within the next 2 weeks, they teach a follow-up lesson where they're following up on that goal. And so we get this cycle together of, hey, we taught, we set a goal, and now we're going to see how that goal played out. And then we have a longer conversation after the 2 lessons together, which we're able to really see growth in that time with our teacher candidates. Some of the sentence stems, and Colleen, this might be what you're looking for too, that I think we can use if you're looking for something, and it might come naturally to you, and if it doesn't, I have it here. I noticed how you leveraged blank to engage students, right? What community knowledge might you draw on when? One way to deepen conceptual talk could be, right? If we're looking at, if you're familiar with the OK or cognitive rigor matrices, where are we falling on that? Are we engaging critical thinking and higher order thinking? And then equity and culturally sustaining practices. How might this activity honor students' language practices or cultural experiences? And then lastly, when you look at the data, right, the data of what happened in the lesson, and it might not be that you have a formal assessment, but as you're walking around with your teacher candidate who's understanding, who might need more support, what patterns stand out about the voices you heard and which voices were missing in your lesson? So these are just some things to think about. As we move forward, I want to put us in breakout rooms, and this is where you'll be with the same folks again. I want you to think about this last semester or quarter, one time you had kind of a tricky feedback moment with one of your candidates. Maybe it was giving, receiving, or overhearing in the classroom something that was going on. So I want you to pick one situation that your group decides on and figure out a way that you could reframe that. So what made the feedback deficit-oriented, inequitable, or uncomfortable, or otherwise challenging for you? And you can use that equity checklist or the sentence starter bank to kind of rewrite that scenario. Again, this is super vulnerable, and so I don't want anyone to feel unsafe in our space. And if you don't feel comfortable sharing, that's okay too. And if you want to share a really positive feedback memory because you're uncomfortable sharing a tricky one, that's okay too. I'm going to copy and paste this into the chat just so I think it will go with you to the breakout room. You can reference it as you go. Okay, that is in the chat, and I'm going to open the room. I'm going to poke into a couple rooms, but I'm thinking we'll do, we're almost out of time, maybe eight minutes, and then we'll come back and kind of do our wrap up. Okay, breakout rooms. And I'm opening. Did they not open?
No.
Oh, no.
No.
Okay, here.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Yes. Okay. It happens. Welcome back. I hope that you all had some time to connect with one another and kind of brainstorm how we might deal with some of these situations that can feel uncomfortable for us with CTs or even cooperating teachers, right? Things come up in supervision and we are this go-between. So we are not having enough time to do my case study activity, but don't worry, that'll be on the slides if you want to practice with it as I share them later. So I just want to get to our takeaways and thoughts or our action plan that we're going to create. So I want you to spend maybe the next 2 minutes just jotting down next observation I will, right? Write one specific feedback move you might try. And then because it will help, right? Is it going to help equity or rigor or whatever reason that is? So I'll just give us a minute or two to think about that. Yeah, Colleen, I will scroll up to that while we're thinking here. Okay, and as we wrap up, I just again want to thank you all for sharing this space and being vulnerable and collaborating with one another. Again, as university supervisors, or like I said now, university partners or mentors, it's really important that we all share the things that are working for us. And so I just, again, we don't have time for that, but I just encourage you, reach out to me. I would love to create some sort of connection with you all so that we can share the things that are happening. And it sounds like, Lisa, maybe that's what you all do with these collaborative groups. And so
Yeah,
maybe we could make a subgroup that, I can help
great
facilitate or
idea.
something.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah, thank you. I love that. Thank you for this session. It was really, really thought-provoking, and
It was
it'll
one.
be great. Lots of people are asking about the slides, so if
Yes,
you
I will
drop
make
those
sure
in the
those are
folder.
added. I'll make sure Lisa has them. I'm
Yeah.
sorry about that. I wish I had them ready. I've been balancing a lot of other deadlines, so
This was
Oh,
fantastic.
thank you. Anytime is great. So
So much.
yeah,
I'm
thank you so much, everyone, again, for just sharing this space with me. And I look forward to hopefully connecting and co-creating with you in the future.
That
It's
would be
me. Well,
fabulous.
thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you so much. And I'm putting in the chat the links for the next couple of sessions so you have them handy.
Oh, thank you. That's very helpful.
And I'm
Yeah.
putting my
And
email in.
we have a few minutes, so next session starts at 11:10, but big round of applause for Gianna. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Fantastic.